Jungkook from BTS was brutally kicked out of a car dealership after a shocking incident. But what happens next will truly change everything. Just when everyone thought this was the end for him, Jungkook proves he has something much bigger in his grasp. What he does next will leave everyone stunned. Jungkook never thought his life could change in one blow. But here he is, staggering back, his face hot from the hard slap given by the car dealership manager. "I don't care who you are," the man shouted, his face flushed. "Get out of here now." Jungkook stood frozen. He felt the stares of the people around him, some shocked, some amused, and others just waiting for this drama to end. But this isn't over. This is just the beginning. And what Jungkook does next will shock everyone. The glass door rattled as Jungkook's body slammed against it hard. His breath was quick, his chest rising and falling rapidly. The car dealership manager stood in the doorway, his face red, his finger pointing straight at Jungkook. "You're out of here. And don't ever come back." Jungkook sat on the sidewalk, his hands clenched. It hurt. Not just his body from being shoved roughly, but also his pride, which was torn apart. Jungkook BTS, a global icon, a man loved by millions around the world, just got kicked out like a criminal. How could this happen? It all started just a few minutes ago. Jungkook came to the dealership with a simple intention, to buy his dream car. A staff member greeted him warmly, eyes sparkling as they recognized who was standing in front of them. But once the manager appeared, everything changed. "Sorry, but we don't serve customers like you," the manager said coldly. Jungkook frowned. "What do you mean? Someone famous like you will only bring trouble," the manager continued. "Your fans will swarm, the media will intrude. We don't want the drama." In an instant, Jungkook's blood boiled. He's not the type to get angry easily, but to be treated like this? He tried to speak, to explain that he just wanted to buy a car without causing a fuss. However, before he could finish his words, the manager shoved him out roughly. And now, he sat there, humiliated, hurt, and filled with a rage he had never felt before. His eyes stared at the luxury cars lined up in the showroom, a place he was no longer allowed to enter. Then, his lips curled into a smirk. "Okay," he murmured softly. "If this is what you want, I'll do something you'll never forget." What will Jungkook do next? It will shock the entire world. Jungkook stood up, straightened his jacket, and took a deep breath. He's not the type to let his pride be trampled on. An idea began to form in his mind, and it wasn't just ordinary revenge. This was going to be something big. His eyes returned to the dealership that had just kicked him out. He wouldn't step foot in there again. No, his plan was much bigger than that. "I'm going to buy this car dealership," he muttered. A passerby glanced at him in confusion, but Jungkook didn't care. He pulled out his phone and called someone who could make it all happen. "Taehyung," he said when the call was answered. "I need your help." On the other end, Yoongi's voice sounded groggy. "What now, Jungkook?" Jungkook smiled slightly. "I want to buy a car dealership." A moment of silence. "You." "What?" Yoongi almost choked. "You want to buy a car dealership? Why not just buy the car?" "I can't," Jungkook replied flatly. "They rejected me. So, I'm going to buy the whole place." Another silence. This time longer. "Wow." Yoongi finally spoke, sounding half amused, half incredulous. "All right. I'll connect you with someone who can help. Are you sure you want to do this?" Jungkook looked at the dealership one more time. He imagined the manager's expression when he realized that the person he had just kicked out was now the owner of the place. A sly smile etched on his face. "I'm very sure." A few days later, Jungkook sat in a spacious office with glass walls overlooking the heart of Seoul. In front of him, a bespectacled man in a sharp suit was talking extensively about the transaction details. "This dealership is a family business that has been around for over 20 years, the man explained. However, they are facing financial difficulties. If we bid the right amount, they will sell." Jungkook leaned back in his chair, narrowing his eyes. How much do they need to sell it? The man opened a document and placed it on the table. About $20 million. Jungkook didn't blink. That was a huge amount, even for someone like him. But he was determined. This wasn't just about buying a car anymore. It was about showing that he couldn't be underestimated. I'll buy it, he said firmly. Arrange everything needed. The man nodded, looking pleased with his client's determination. All right, I'll start negotiations. If everything goes smoothly, in 2 weeks, that dealership will be yours. Jungkook clenched his hands tightly. 2 weeks. That was enough time to plan his next move. 2 weeks later, as the sun shone brightly in the Seoul sky, a shocking announcement rocked the automotive industry. The largest car dealership in the Gangnam area has been bought by a mysterious new owner. The news spread quickly, and it didn't take long for the dealership manager, the man who had kicked Jungkook out, to hear the news. He stood in his office, staring at his phone screen with a confused expression. What the hell? He murmured. Just then, his office door swung open. He turned, and his blood ran cold. Jungkook BTS stood there. But this time, he didn't come as a rejected customer. He came as the owner of this place. Good morning, Jungkook said casually. Nice to see you again. The manager froze in place. His face went pale. Why you? Jungkook stepped inside, surveying the room with a meaningful gaze. I just wanted to make sure you know one thing, he said, stopping right in front of the manager's desk. This place is now mine. The manager opened his mouth, then closed it again, unable to speak. Jungkook smirked. Do you remember when you kicked me out? He continued. Well, I guess it's now my turn to decide who gets to stay here and who has to go. The manager swallowed hard. I can explain. No need, Jungkook cut in. He crossed his arms, staring at the man with a flat expression. I just want to know one thing. The manager trembled. What is it? Jungkook leaned in slightly, then spoke in a low but sharp voice. What does it feel like to be kicked out? The entire dealership staff gathered in the main hall, staring at Jungkook with confused and curious expressions. They had all heard the news that the new owner had taken over, and now they were seeing for themselves who that person was. Jungkook stood before them, wearing casual attire but still radiating the charisma of a superstar. He didn't speak directly. He let the silence linger for a few seconds, building the tension. Finally, he said, I know many of you are wondering what will happen next. Some employees exchanged glances, while others waited anxiously. I could fire the manager who kicked me out that day, Jungkook continued. I have the power to do that. The manager, standing at the edge of the room with a tense face, bowed his head. He knew his fate was now in Jungkook's hands. But I won't do that, Jungkook finally said. The entire room fell silent. The manager lifted his head with wide eyes. What? Jungkook smiled slightly. You did treat me poorly, but I won't repay you in kind. Instead, I want you to prove that you can change. If in 3 months you're still working with the same mentality, then I will fire you. But if you can show that you deserve to be here, then you will keep your job under me. The manager could hardly speak. Consider this a second chance, Jungkook said. Don't waste it. The room filled with whispers of admiration. The other employees looked at Jungkook with greater respect than before. Jungkook looked at them all and smiled. Now, let's start a big change here. And with that, a new chapter in Jungkook's life began. The largest car dealership in Gangnam was now under the ownership of Jungkook BTS. The news spread like wildfire on social media and in the automotive industry. Many were shocked, not only because a global superstar now owned a car dealership, but also because of his controversial decision to keep the manager who had kicked him out. Many thought Jungkook would immediately fire the man as an act of revenge. However, no one expected him to actually give him a second chance. But that didn't mean it would be easy for the manager. Because now, the whole world was watching him. That morning, Jungkook arrived at the dealership wearing casual clothes, a black t-shirt, leather jacket, and ripped jeans. He walked in confidently, while the employees stared at him with curiosity and a bit of nervousness. Some of them whispered, still having a hard time believing that Jungkook BTS was now their boss. The manager, named Kang Daeho, stood in the corner of the room with a tense face. He knew today was the beginning of a big change, and all eyes were on him. Jungkook stopped in the middle of the room and looked at everyone. "I know many of you are wondering, why would an idol buy a car dealership?" he said casually. "The answer is simple. I want to prove something." Everyone fell silent, listening intently. "I want to prove that this place can be bigger than before. That we can create a car buying experience different from any other. And I want to prove that no one should underestimate others just because of their status." Jungkook's gaze landed directly on Daeho, who immediately bowed his head. "But I can't do this alone," Jungkook continued. "I need all of you." Some employees began to nod, starting to understand his point. "So, starting today, we're going to overhaul this place. We're going to make this dealership the #1 in Korea. And to do that, we need to change." Jungkook looked at Daeho. "Kang Daeho SSI," he called. Daeho was startled, then quickly replied, "Why yes, Mr. Jeon? Show me how this dealership works. I want to see everything." Daeho gulped. "Right now." Jungkook grinned. "Yes, right now." And just like that, the revolution began. Jungkook may be a superstar, but the business world was something entirely new for him. He spent his first day observing every corner of the dealership, talking to employees, and understanding the sales system. However, the more he learned, the more he realized how poorly this dealership was managed. Poor customer service. Many customers complained about unfriendly staff or slow responses to requests. Non-transparent pricing. Many customers felt cheated due to fluctuating prices depending on negotiations. Outdated marketing. This dealership still relied on print ads and brochures, while the world had shifted to digital. Jungkook looked at Daeho with a serious expression. "Why is this place running like this?" he asked. Daeho bowed his head. "We've been following the old ways." "That's the problem," Jungkook interrupted. "We need to change. And we'll start with what's most important, customers." Jungkook then gathered all the employees and announced something shocking. "We're going to completely change the dealership system. No more unclear pricing. No more poor service. And no more ineffective old systems. I want this place to be known as the best car dealership in Korea, where people come because they trust us." Daeho looked shocked. "That won't be easy," he said hesitantly. Jungkook smiled. "I never said this would be easy. But I don't like doing things the ordinary way. If we want to win, we have to be different from the rest." And that was the beginning of a big change. Not everyone was happy with Jungkook's success. A few weeks after the dealership began to change, sales figures skyrocketed. Many new customers came because they wanted to buy cars directly from Jungkook BTS's dealership. However, this also caught the attention of their biggest competitor, Hyun Motors. The owner, a man named Choi Min-sik, had dominated the industry for years. And he wasn't happy to see a new dealership stealing the spotlight. Who is this new kid? Min-sik fumed as his assistant reported the sales increase at Jungkook's dealership. "He comes from the entertainment world, sir. He's using his popularity to attract customers," his assistant replied. Min-sik smirked cynically. "A singer trying to play in the business world? That's a joke." His assistant hesitated. "But their sales keep rising. People are starting to trust their dealership more than ours." Min-sik's expression turned cold. "If that's the case," he said quietly, "let's make him fail." And with that, a wicked plan began. Without warning, Jungkook's dealership started experiencing a series of strange problems. Some newly delivered cars were damaged for no apparent reason. Negative reviews popped up online, even though no customers had actually complained. Their main suppliers suddenly pulled out, leaving the dealership without new car stock. Jungkook sensed something suspicious. Sitting in his office, he reviewed the reports that had been given to him. "This isn't a coincidence," he said. Taehyung, who was now performing better under Jungkook, nodded. "I think so too. I've checked with several suppliers, and they all have one thing in common." Jungkook looked at him. "What is it?" Taehyung took a deep breath. "They all work with Hyun Motors." Jungkook narrowed his eyes. "So this is their doing?" Taehyung nodded. "It seems they don't like seeing us succeed." Jungkook smiled slightly. "All right, if they want to play dirty." He leaned back in his chair, his eyes shining with determination. "We'll teach them a lesson." Jungkook knew he couldn't fight Minsik in a conventional way. If Hyun Motors wanted to play dirty, then he had to be smarter. He devised a subtle revenge strategy, something Minsik couldn't easily counter. And when he finally launched his attack, the entire Korean automotive industry was shaken. In his modern office, Jungkook sat staring at his computer screen seriously. Next to him, Taehyung stood with a tense expression, while Yoongi, who was now involved as Jungkook's business advisor, crossed his arms, deep in thought. "So they blocked all our main suppliers," Yoongi said. Jungkook nodded. "Right. Hyun Motors controls a large part of the market. They have long-standing relationships with suppliers, so when they say don't sell to Jungkook's dealership, those suppliers immediately cut ties with us." Taehyung sighed. "If this continues, in 2 months, we'll run out of new car stock." Jungkook narrowed his eyes, thinking hard. Then, a sly smile appeared on his face. "I have an idea," he said. "We don't need suppliers from Korea." Taehyung turned with confusion. "What do you mean?" Jungkook stood up, took his phone, and quickly typed something. "Hyun Motors controls local suppliers. But this world is vast. Why should we depend on Korean suppliers?" Yoongi smiled slightly, catching on. "You want to look for overseas suppliers?" Jungkook nodded. "Exactly. I'll use my connections abroad to bring cars directly from manufacturers in Japan, Germany, and America. They can't stop us if we take another route." Taehyung looked shocked. "But that will require a huge cost and complicated logistics." Jungkook smiled confidently. "If we want to win, we have to bet bigger than they do." And with that, a new strategy began. Over the next few weeks, Jungkook busied himself reaching out to various global car manufacturers. Thanks to his status as a world celebrity, he gained direct access to CEOs of several major automotive companies, something a regular dealership couldn't do. In no time, Jungkook managed to sign contracts with 3 major manufacturers from Japan, Germany, and America. Now, his dealership not only sold local cars but also had exclusive imported cars that weren't available anywhere else in Korea. And more importantly, Hyun Motors couldn't do anything to stop it. As this news began to spread, the media went wild. Jungkook BTS's dealership now selling luxury imports. Hyun Motors in trouble. New dealership shakes up the Korean automotive industry. On the other side, at Hyun Motors headquarters, Choi Min-sik was furious. That bastard. He slammed documents on the table. How could he get overseas suppliers so quickly? His assistant looked nervous. It seems his international connections as a celebrity are really helping, sir. We can't stop him. Min-sik sighed deeply, then smiled slyly. If that's the case, let's create another problem for him. And the next attack began. Just days after Jungkook's dealership started selling luxury cars from abroad, a huge scandal suddenly erupted online. Breaking, Jungkook BTS's dealership allegedly selling used cars as new. Social media exploded with speculation and negative comments. Jungkook, who was at the dealership, received hundreds of calls from reporters and investors. What the hell is this? He muttered while reading the fake news. Taehyung rushed in with a panicked face. Mr. Jeon, there are many customers asking for refunds. They're afraid we're really selling used cars. Jungkook clenched his fists. He knew this had to be Minseek's doing. Johnny, who was also reading the news, clicked his tongue. He's clever. He can't take down your business directly, so he's attacking your reputation. Jungkook took a deep breath, then stood up. We'll fight back bigger, he said. If they use the media to bring us down, we'll use the media to destroy them. A counterplan was set in motion. Within 24 hours, Jungkook held an emergency press conference and streamed it live on all his social media platforms. As the cameras turned on, he stood in front of dozens of reporters and looked directly into the camera lens. I don't usually respond to rumors or fake news, he said firmly. But this time is different. He then raised several documents. Here is official proof from the car manufacturers that every car we sell is new, not used. I also have certificates from customs proving that all our imports are legitimate and verified. Then, Jungkook stared into the camera more intensely. I know who spread this fake news, he said in a cold tone. And I want to remind them, if you play dirty, I will make you regret it. The press conference went viral. Jungkook responds to fake scandal with strong evidence. Hyun Motors allegedly behind this defamation. It didn't take long for the public to start suspecting Hyun Motors. And as customers began to leave them, Minseek knew he had made a huge mistake. In the following months, Jungkook's dealership continued to grow. Meanwhile, Hyun Motors began to crumble. Suppliers started pulling out for fear of getting involved in the scandal. Investors lost confidence and sold their shares. Their sales plummeted drastically. And finally, on a quiet morning, Hyun Motors filed for bankruptcy. In his office, Minseek sat slumped, staring at the news with a blank expression. He had lost. Meanwhile, at Jungkook's dealership, Taehyung rushed in with a beaming smile. Mr. Jeon, it's official. Hyun Motors is bankrupt. Jungkook smiled slightly, then stood up and walked outside, gazing at the clear sky. He had won. But this was just the beginning. Because now, he was not just a world superstar. He was a powerhouse in the automotive industry. Jungkook sat in an exclusive meeting room on the top floor of his dealership building, gazing at the view of Seoul from the large glass window. Taehyung and Junggi sat across from him with serious expressions. Our business is booming, Taehyung said, placing a report on the table. This month's sales are up 300%, and we're now ranked second as the largest dealership in Korea. Jungkook nodded. Good. But Junggi didn't look too pleased. We did win against Hyun Motors, he said quietly. But that's actually the problem. Jungkook turned. What do you mean? Junggi sighed. Now we're not just a small rising dealership. We've become a threat to the big players in this industry. And do you know who controls the automotive business in Korea? Taehyung looked tense. Shinwa Group, he murmured. Shinwa Group was a giant conglomerate that owned the largest chain of car dealerships in Korea. They had been around for decades and had strong ties with the government and global automotive companies. And now, they were starting to take notice of Jungkook. There are rumors that the CEO of Shinwa Group, Kang Ji-hoon, is not happy with our growth, Junggi continued. They see us as a threat. And if I were him, I wouldn't sit idly by. Jungkook smirked. If that's the case, let's make them move faster. Taehyung swallowed hard. What do you mean? Jungkook stood up, took his phone, and typed something. I'm going to make an announcement that will shake the industry. And within less than 24 hours, all the media in Korea was filled with new news. Jungkook BTS announces plans to open 10 new dealerships across Korea. Is this the end of Shinwa Group's monopoly? And just as expected, Kang Ji-hoon finally moved. 2 days after Jungkook's announcement, he received a mysterious invitation. Mr. Jeon, CEO Kang Ji-hoon wants to meet with you. We will arrange a meeting at the Shinwa Group headquarters tomorrow at 10 a.m. Taehyung looked anxious. Are you sure you want to meet him? He's not an ordinary person. People say he's like a tiger. If he sets his sights on you, you'll be crushed. Jungkook smiled slightly. Good. I'm a tiger too. The next day, Jungkook entered the Grand Shinhwa Group building. He was taken to an exclusive meeting room, where Kang Jeon was already waiting for him. Jeon was a man in his 50s with sharp eyes and the cold aura of a true business leader. Jungkook, he said, crossing his arms. We finally meet. Jungkook sat in the chair across from him without flinching. Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Kang. What do you want to discuss? Jeon smiled slightly. I want to ask, why did you enter this industry? You're already successful in the entertainment world. Why bother? Jungkook looked at him calmly. Because I like challenges. Jeon nodded slowly. Interesting. Then, he leaned back in his chair and looked at Jungkook more intently. But you should know something, young man. His voice became more serious. The business world is not like the entertainment world. This is a world where people like us can't play fair. Jungkook held back a smile. I already know. Jeon stared at him for a long time, then finally smiled. You are indeed different from the rest, he said. So, I will give you a chance. Jungkook raised an eyebrow. A chance. Jeon placed documents on the table. Join me, he said. I will make you a partner in Shinhwa Group. You will receive shares, a position on the board of directors, and full support for your business expansion. Jungkook looked at the documents with an unreadable expression. Sounds interesting, he said quietly. But, what's in it for you? Jeon smiled slightly. I'll make sure you don't become my enemy. The room fell silent. Taehyung and Junggi, sitting behind Jungkook, held their breath. Jungkook knew this was a test. If he accepted this offer, he would become part of the old system. He would be safe, but he would never truly be able to change the industry. But if he refused, then war would begin. Jungkook took the documents, opened them, read the contents, then placed them back down. Sorry, Mr. Kang, he said calmly. But I'm not interested in being part of someone else's empire. Jeon stared at him for a long time, then laughed softly. You just turned down the best offer you'll ever get, he said. Jungkook smiled. Or maybe I just made the best decision of my life. Jeon stopped laughing. His eyes turned cold. If that's the case, he said quietly, I hope you're ready to face the consequences. And with that, the meeting ended. But Jungkook knew, the war had just begun.